Course 3, Lesson 24 and 25. We are adding and subtracting decimal numbers, and then we will multiply and divide decimal numbers. So when we are adding and subtracting decimals, we want to line up the decimal places. So to help you remember this, you can remember line up the dots and give it all you got. Which means if we have something like this, 96.5 plus 103.7, we should not start adding right now because those decimal places are not in the same line. So we move it to make sure that our decimal places are lined up right on top of each other. And then we can start adding and saying, okay, 5 plus 7, that's 12. So I put the 2 down below and take and add the 1. Now I should have brought down my decimal point before. Okay, and then we add 1, 6, and 3, which is 10. We do 1 and 9 and 0, which is 10, and 1 and 1 is 2. So we would see that my answer is 200.2. The same idea applies when we are subtracting. Now, right now, our decimals aren't lined up. It may look nice because we end at the same part, okay, but we need to move that decimal. What that forces us to do is see that I need to add a 0 at the end to make sure that I can do 0 minus 2. Well, to do that, I need to borrow. Okay, so I have 7 now, and I bring over that 1 for 0 so that it's a 10 minus 2. So we get 8. 7 minus 3 is 4. I have my decimal. 5 minus 4 is 1. 8 minus 6 is 2. And 2 minus nothing is 2. So we have 221.48. All right. To subtract some of these other ones, what if we have just a whole number minus a number with a decimal? Well, we put a decimal and some zeros to help us out. And we need to borrow from this 6 to make it a 5. Make this a 10. We borrow from that to make it a 9 and this a 10. So we do 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 7 is 2. We have our decimal. And then 5 minus 3 is 2. 2.26. And if we're adding, we have those decimals lined up already. We can add the 0 at the end to make everything even. And we have 7 plus 0 is 7. We have 11, we have 12, have our decimal point, and we have 4. So 4.217. To practice, if we don't have them lined up already, we need to make sure that we line up those decimals. So if I take my bigger one, 34.78, and subtract 14.589, make sure you line up those decimals. So we add a 0 and we borrow. Okay, this becomes a 7, and we have 10 minus 9 is 1. 7 becomes a 6, so we have 17 minus 8 is 9. 6 minus 5 is 1. 4 minus 4 is 0. And we have a 2. So 20.191. And then over here, we have 57 minus 0.357. Now that looks funky, so let's make sure we add those zeros at the end and do some borrowing so that we have a 6, 10 makes it 9, 10 to 9, and 10. So we have 3, 4, 6, and our 5, 6. Okay, so 56.643 when we subtract. Now, you will come across some word problems in this, something like this. Last night's storm dropped 1.5 inches of rain. Now we've gotten 26.42. How much rain had we gotten before the last night's storm? Well, this, we want to find a difference. We want to say we have 26.42, but we want what was before that 1.5. So we need to do 26.42 minus 1.50. So that we get 2, we have to borrow. Okay, we have a 9, and we have a 24.92. Okay, and our last example for this. How many degrees above normal is 100.2 degrees for its body temperature? Well, normal temperature is 98.6, so I need to find the difference of 100.2 minus 98.6. So we borrow. Okay, it becomes a 0. This is a 10, then a 9, 10, then a 9. So we have 12 minus 6 is 6, and we have 1. And we find that my difference is 1.6 degrees. 1.6 degrees. All right, these are a couple, or let's continue on actually with our multiplying and dividing fractions. Now when we're multiplying, multiplying decimals, spots behind the dots to the left you trot. What we're saying is we are looking behind our decimal points and saying, how many numbers do we have behind the decimal point? Well, however many we have, I need to move this decimal. So we have 7 is 1, 3 is a second, so we need to move this decimal point 2 times 1, 2. So that when we multiply my 3 and the 7, it's not an answer of 21, it's an answer of 0.21. And now with this one, again, we can work it all out, multiplying 0.91 and 3.4, and we get our work here. So our final is 3094, but when I multiply 0.91 and 3.4, I surely won't get 3094. That's because we need to move the decimal 1, 2, 3 places. So we move this decimal 1, 2, 3 times. Okay. Let's try some for ourselves. So 1.273 and 0.06. We'll try this one and then move on. So 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 7 is 42, but plus 1, so 43. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4 is 16, and 6 times 1 plus 1 is 7. Now that times 0 at the end, it's not going to help us anything, but we do need to add them up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decimals. So we start here and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have our decimal right here, but that empty space I have to fill with a 0, so that my answer is 0.07638. Okay, make sure that you move your decimals fully to get the full answer. So you can try a couple more of these if you need more practice. But our last operation is division. Okay, so bring up the dot and give it all you got. So if I have something like this, 2.16, and that's divided by 8, I'm going to bring up my decimal point, and I'm just going to divide like normal. Well, 8 into 2 isn't going to work, but 8 into 21, I can say that happens. I can get 2 in there, so I have 16. I subtract and I have 5. Bring down the 6. Well, 8 into 56 is 7. We get my 56, comes out to 0, and I'm good to go. All right, so bring up that decimal point. Okay, you can try that one on your own. Try a few more examples. We'll do one together. How about this? 380 divided by 4. So I bring up the decimal and I say, okay, 4 into 38, that would work 9 times, so 36. All right, subtract, and I have 2 left over. Bring down the 0. So 4 into 20 is 5. Okay, so I have 20, and I have 0. Now I'm not done because I still have more to bring down, so that 3, I can't get any 4s into 3, so that's going to be a 0. But I take the 3 and bring down a 2, and I say, okay, 4 into 32, that's 8. So I have 32, giving me 0. Okay, so I get 95.08. All right, here's a couple more that you can practice from. But what happens if we have a decimal outside of the division? Well, I don't really like to take 8.0 and divide it by 1.6. How about if I take 80 and divide it by 16? Now, a lot of you know that I can take this decimal and move it once, just so that I can move it inside 2. What I'm really doing is just multiplying each of these by 10, so that I can take, all right, 16 into 80, well, that would work 5 times. Okay, and I bring up the dot and I see 16 times 5 is 80, and I have my answer of 5. So if you have decimal points outside, just make sure that you move them so that you can do the division with whole numbers. So like this 1.9 and 6.5, I would move it once and move it once, bring up my dot. Move it once, bring up my dot, and I'm just dividing like I always would. So that when I get to problems like this, what is the cost of 10.2 gallons of a gas for 2.25, I know what I should do because either I'm multiplying or dividing, okay, I can just go from there. So for the first one, what's the cost of 10.2 gallons of gas for 2.25 per gallon? So I'm going to do 2.25 times 10.2. Remember, I don't have to line up the decimals when I'm multiplying. I just need to remember how many times I have to move. So 2 times 5, is 10. 4 plus 1 is 5. And 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, I'm going to have a bunch of zeros in here for that 0 times 5, 2, and 2. And then I have 5, 2, and 2. So that when I add it up, I get 0, 5, 9, 2, and 2. Now, it's surely not going to cost me $22,000 to fill up my gas tank. I need to move that decimal 1, 2, 3 places back. So I go 1, 2, 3. So I am going to pay $22.95 for my 10 gallons of gas. Not bad. So how about these peaches? I have 1.6 pounds of peaches for $2. What is the cost per pound? Well, what I'm saying is if I just want 1 pound, how much is it? That means that I need to take my $2 and divide it by 1.6. So I move my decimal and I bring up my dot. Well, 16 into 20, I can have that happen once. All right, and I have 4 and bring down the 0, 40 left over. 16 into 40, well, that can happen 2 times. Okay, that gives me 32. So I have 8 left over. And 16 into 80, that can happen 5 times. So I have 80 and nothing left over. So it'll cost me $1.25 per pound. Well, I hope this was helpful for your homework and for studying.